Ice, baby. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat, brought to you by PatriotPumpEnergy.com. Go grab your bottle of Patriot Pump Energy. Right now, promo code Conservative Cat at checkout. That's $10 off at checkout. Best promo code available. Ice, baby. Donald Trump is targeting Chicago. And JB Pritzker, of course, is panicking. And we are going to get into it today. It's not a second-class right, the Second Amendment. The DOJ versus Governor J.B. Pritzker and his gun grab, the so-called assault weapons ban. We're going to get into it. Plus, tax to the bone. Governor J.B. Pritzker, of course, his over $55 billion budget was signed in yesterday, and I don't know. he's taxing you to the bone. So we're going to get into all of that, plus today's show. A little bit later in the 7 o'clock hour, I plan to break down this war between Israel and Iran. It's heating up. And today's show is going to discuss whether or not the U.S. should be getting involved and if we're going to be entering World War III. No, I don't think that we're going to be entering World War III right now or yet. But we do have obligations to Israel. But Israel, they are a pretty strong fighting force. Okay, that's what you've got to look forward to in the 7 o'clock hour. I don't want to get into it right now. I do want to get into Governor J.B. Pritzker. And, this is no longer a battle between right and left. This is a battle between those who want law and those who don't want laws. people who are lawless and advocate for lawlessness, and people who advocate for the law. That's what this is. It's not a battle between right and left, Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative. It's really just a battle between people who want laws and advocate for law and order. That's it. So once again, our state, Illinois, making national headlines, kind of embarrassing. President Donald Trump, yes, the real President Donald Trump, he is ramping up ICE operations in cities, and he has declared these sanctuary cities as rebellious against federal law, that they are acting in rebellion against federal law. I think that we should be cuffing every single one of these blue city governors, mayors, whatever it is. We should be cuffing them and arresting them for rebellion. I definitely think we have a case against Governor J.B. Pritzker for acting as, like, not even of the United States. Like, this is quite literally, I would say, an insurrection. Governor J.B. Pritzker, I've talked about it several times on this show. He's done global trade deals and has attempted to do global trade deals, although they mean nothing at the end of the day. He has sanctioned, or has attempted to sanction, El Salvador because they refused to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia back to the United States. So, and then he's also transitioned us off the FDA. That's the Federal Drug Administration standards, and he wants us to do the WHO standards. And we know what the WHO is. It's all Chinese bureaucrats, CCP bureaucrats. The FDA is actually made up of doctors, American doctors and scientists, which I know it's all toothless. Like, doctors are not going to be going off of the WHO standards. Like, if it's not FDA approved drug, then they're not going to prescribe it to their patients, I hope, unless you get a real left-wing doctor. But at the end of the day, I think Pritzker, there's enough here to say that he's acting as if, he's running his own little country. I call it Pritzkerstan. I don't even think I live in the state of Illinois anymore. I don't recognize it. And I'm pretty sure that this is just a brand new country. And I don't know if it's because of his national ambitions. He wants to be president of the United States, so he's getting on some sort of national stage and doing these global deals and trying to get himself out there. Not to mention, oh, by the way, the Gotion deal. Gotion, the Chinese EV battery maker, planned for Manteno, Illinois. He gave him like $500 million in tax credits. And then they have ties to the CCP, ties to slave labor of the Uyghurs. So this guy, I don't know. I think that he's running his own little country and he's working with our foreign adversaries, which I think is enough to put him in cuffs. But I don't know. I'm not running things over there. I'm not the DOJ. If I was in the DOJ, I'd say you've got enough to put him in cuffs for rebellion and an insurrection. Trump didn't mince words. He said, I look at Chicago, all the Democrat-run cities, and they think that they're going to get these illegal aliens to vote. And that's not going to happen. So let's take a listen here. Here we go.
I want them to focus on the cities, because the cities are where you really have what's called sanctuary cities, and that's where the people are. I look at New York, I look at Chicago. I mean, you got a really bad governor in Chicago and a bad mayor, but the governor is probably the worst in the country.
I don't know exactly how big the force will be, but I do know that he has used other law enforcement along with ICE to carry out his ill-conceived mission to go after people who frankly are paying taxes and they're law-abiding and they've been here for many, many years. I think those are the wrong people to go after. We ought to go after the violent criminals.
Most of those people are in the cities, all blue cities, all Democrat-run cities, and they think they're going to use them to vote. It's not going to happen.
I think what he's done in California has really hurt him politically, and so I don't think he'll do it in other places, but we know that ICE is coming once again in force to cities across the country.
Okay, so let that sink in for a second. Just let it sink in. Our U.S. president just openly said that these blue cities are harboring illegals to inflate their political power, and I don't think he's wrong at all. Let's unpack this. The media won't say this out loud, but Trump just did. and I'm going to get banned. So I have a strike against my account because yesterday I was talking about this kind of stuff. I'm going to continue to do this. I was a strike against my TikTok account. I'm going to continue to talk about this because this is exactly what they're doing. They're bringing in illegal immigrants to inflate their population numbers. And Illinois, I know, is doing this because of the mass exodus problem that we've had since 2014. We've lost population year after year after year. And the media won't say this out loud, but these sanctuary policies aren't about compassion. It's actually about control, obviously. By shielding hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens in these cities like Chicago, they're inflating their population numbers. And what does that do? It inflates the census count. It inflates congressional districts so they can count them to try to regain that congressional seat that we lost. And if you count them, you can ask for more federal funding. So yes, electoral maps, all of it. So let's connect the dots here. In 2020, Illinois lost a congressional seat because American citizens kept leaving. But what if you could replace the American citizens with undocumented immigrants? And they can't legally vote, obviously, but that still could impact how many House seats you have and how many House seats you get. They can't legally vote. We know this federally. Do they? I don't know. Well, yes, they do. This actually happened. It was a Chinese national. I forget. It was out west somewhere. He actually voted in the election and his vote counted, and they didn't even take away his vote. They just let it be. He was a Chinese foreign national. He wasn't a citizen of this country, and he voted in our federal elections. Now, this impacts how many seats we get, and it's legal gerrymandering by mass migration. Okay, so that's what they're doing. And our very own Governor J.B. Pritzker, who Trump rightfully called probably the worst governor in the country, is doing everything he can to protect this little scheme of his. So while Trump is sending ICE to enforce the law, Pritzker's crying foul, not because it's unconstitutional, but because it interrupts his narrative and it disrupts his power. That's what this is all about. It's about gaining political power, gaining population, making sure we get that seat back. And we get it by inflating the numbers with this illegal immigration, this migration of illegals. So here's what he said. He said, I know he has used other law enforcement along ICE to carry out his ill-conceived mission to go after people who are frankly paying taxes and are law-abiding. This is what Governor J.B. Pritzker says. Hold on. Law-abiding illegals? I mean, that's like saying an honest bank robber, right? You can't violate federal law, jump the line over legal applicants, people who are seeking asylum, people who are getting naturalized, work visas, student visas. You don't get to jump ahead of the legal applicants and then call yourself law-abiding. So this is what this is really about. Pritzker is losing power because Trump, once he starts deporting these people who are protected currently under Pritzker's sanctuary policies, the numbers change. The congressional maps change. Okay, they're inflating right now the population. We'd lose more congressional seats here in the state of Illinois, and the Democrat power weakens because we've got a ton. So people are leaving Chicago. We've got a ton of congressional seats in Chicago. If we weren't to inflate these numbers with illegal immigrants, we wouldn't have, as I think we're going to lose maybe 2, maybe 3 congressional seats. That's why Pritzker told the reporters again, we know ICE is coming again in force. They're coming again. Good. Law and order is back, baby. ICE, baby. And it is time that law and order is restored. And like I said, this isn't about blue versus red, Republican versus Democrat. This is about people who say, no, I'm pro law and order. And then people who say, I'm pro lawlessness. That's what this is about. So here's your biblical view for you. Let's bring this home biblically. I like to do this. I want to put a biblical lens on it because what does the Bible say? The basic instructions before leaving Earth. Romans 13 says God established governing authorities to maintain order and punish wrongdoing. Okay, immigration laws exist to protect the peace and ensure fairness. That's why immigration laws exist and sovereignty. God is a God of sovereignty. God believes in borders. Okay. When the governor refuses to cooperate with lawful authorities, that's rebellion. That's lawlessness. It's not leadership. Pritzker isn't standing for the oppressed. He is aiding lawlessness and violating his oath to his constituency. That's what's going on here. And the Bible explicitly says here to maintain order and punish wrongdoing. It's very explicit. God calls us to show mercy. The Bible tells us to show mercy, yes, but we also have to uphold justice, because guess what? Our God is God of justice and mercy. So unlike Allah, Yahweh, the Judeo-Christian God, so Yahweh, I am, you have a personal relationship with God that could be achieved. We have a personal relationship with God through Christ as Christians. Jews believe that they can have a personal relationship if you're a prophet of some kind. I think they continue to do that. I'm not well versed in Judaism, but they believe that they can have an interpersonal relationship with God. You can't have that with the God of Allah, which is why in Middle Eastern countries outside of Israel, and we're going to get to this a little bit later, Iran, Syria, Libya, Lebanon, whatever, all of these now terrorist taken over countries, okay, because Iran's been funding them. All of these terrorist organizations and countries believe that justice is theirs, and they follow a justice or a just merciful God. God is a God of justice. Yahweh is a God of justice. Allah, the God, which means you cannot have a personal relationship, is a God of mercy, an all merciful God, but is not a God of justice. And justice is for the people. So you know how the left always screams, no justice, no peace, no justice, no peace, because they believe that justice is theirs, right? Justice is mine, saith the Lord. We can believe in justice, yes, and we can advocate for law and order and seek justice, yes. Justice is mine, saith the Lord. And as Christians, we should be more like Christ and seek justice, but also show mercy. Both. They work together in balance, mercy and justice, in this faith. So they all believe that justice, their job is to only get justice, and that's why you hear the left always chants no justice, no peace. They always scream that because they truly believe that they are seeking justice on behalf of their God here on earth. So yeah, I went down that rabbit hole. Sorry. Justice without law is chaos. They don't have law. The Bible very explicitly says to maintain order and punish wrongdoing. That's the law. And to establish governing authorities. They don't believe this over here. They don't. And I'm not, harping on Muslim faith or Islamic faith, but those who adopt this lawlessness ideology and believe that the law can be taken into their own hands and they don't establish governing authorities and maintain order, they take the law into their own hands and they almost act as like vigilantes on behalf of their God. Our God, Yahweh, he brought down Jesus Christ right to die on the cross, which was an act of mercy and justice. Justice in that Christ died a horrific death, sweated blood, which is very, very rare. Just look up the complete hell he had to go through on the cross. 39 lashings, each for a strand of diseases, by the way. That's really interesting. He was whipped like 39 times or something like that. So that was justice. But the mercy part of that was that it wasn't you or I on the cross. It was one guy. It was Jesus. So that's mercy. So our God is God, mercy, and justice. And these people, they don't really understand that. They don't understand the law. They don't understand that this is a game of balance, that you have to establish governing authorities, that you have to maintain order. A lot of these people on the left, which is why you see the left sympathize a lot of times with this radical Islamic ideology. Also, the radical Islamic ideology and the left, they hold this ideology that justice is theirs. They don't want laws. They want to take justice into their own hands and really just be lawless, and cause all kinds of havoc. So what does this mean for Illinois families? What does it mean for you? Why should you care about Pritzker defending non-citizens? Well, it's because you're footing the bill. free healthcare for migrants while our rural hospitals are closing. There's rural hospitals that are closing. Like I said, the mass population exodus in Illinois, you're starting to see student enrollment dropping. There's schools that are supposed to be closing in Chicago. Now the Chicago's teachers union is trying to stop that from happening, because if you close the schools, then the administration, you have to cut all those salaries, the bloated salaries, the DEI administrators, you'd have to cut all those salaries, and they're, fighting against that because they want to get paid essentially for doing nothing. But the student enrollment's dropping in Chicago. Our rural hospitals are closing because we can't find people to work in these hospitals anymore because the population exodus. The public school enrollment is dropping, but they're inflating it with illegal immigrants. Okay, so our test scores are terrible in these public schools. And it's really because they're inflating it with this illegal immigration population. They don't have enough teachers, in these, specifically the Chicago area, because a lot of the teachers have moved, the sane ones anyway. The ones that are left are stuck with dropping enrollment, but surging enrollment, in that it's being replaced by illegal immigrant children. So that's also why you see your test scores collapsing as well. Part of that is because a lot of these illegal immigrant children can't even speak English, right? And they, some of them, I would even say, are trafficked. I've talked to people where they say the kids in the schools, a lot of them are trafficked here, and they're actually drug mules, and they go to school during the day, and they actually go and they peddle drugs for drug traffickers. They're brought across the border, and then they get enrolled in school, and that's how they spread their drugs in these schools, like high schools, middle schools, things like that. So you're fitting the bill. In public schools, you've got to deal with that. You've got to deal with trying to find more teachers, paying teachers more in order to deal with the illegal immigration surge in the schools as well. Property taxes continue to go up because the test scores keep collapsing. The teachers are going to continue to say, well, we need more money. So your property taxes, all of that goes to pretty much schools, and the teachers are going to say, oh, we need more money. We need more money. And now your property taxes go up. So our governor is more worried about whether ICE might arrest somebody who's been here for many, many years, regardless of how they got here. He's worried about that. Let me ask you, just real quick in the comment section, let me ask you, if you snuck into Canada, broke federal law, stayed there for 10 years, would they give you health care? Would they give you a legal immunity? They probably wouldn't. They'd probably deport you like tomorrow. So, and they'd be right to do that. If you were to go to any other country, snuck into Canada or El Salvador, and you stayed for 10 years, and I don't think that they'd give you free healthcare and legal immunity. So what do? We speak truth in our churches and our schools. We get out, we vote these politicians out who prioritize illegals over law-abiding families, and we pray for a return to order. Okay, not chaos. They're all about chaos. It's no longer right versus left, red versus blue. This is about those who advocate for law and order, who understand Romans 13, and those who don't. So ICE is coming. That's good news for law-abiding Americans who've been ignored for far too long. Keep your eyes open this election season. And remember, sanctuary cities, they're not safe havens. They're ticking time bombs and they're funded with your tax dollars, by the way. These are not safe havens. They're ticking time bombs. So I want to get into today's story about the Second Amendment, because let's remember the Second Amendment is not a second-class right. This is not something we put on the back burner, not here in America, not by God's design. And under the Department of Justice now, the Department of Justice we have now, the DOJ, they still remember the Constitution, what it is, and we are taking aim legally, rhetorically, and faithfully at this Illinois unconstitutional assault weapons ban. We are taking aim at that today, and the DOJ just threw Governor J.B. Pritzker's narrative right under the proverbial bus. So we are going to be talking about this story today. Let's rewind in order to tell the story correctly. I've got to tell you about what happened in early 2023. Illinois passed the sweeping gun control law banning more than 170 so-called assault weapons, including AR-15s, one of the most commonly used rifles in America. I don't like it so much. It's too accurate. I like those shotguns that just, blow a hole in the paper and you can't really miss. And like, it's just a 12 gauge shotgun. That's what I like. I also like the pistols, Glocks. So anyway, let me get back to the topic. Sorry, I got excited. I haven't been to the range in a long time. So they banned magazines that could hold more than 10 rounds. That's what they did with this Protect Illinois Communities Act, PICA. Translation, they banned millions of law-abiding gun owners from exercising their rights in the name of safety. The bill was, of course, cooked up in Springfield, cheered by the governor, and rammed through as a response to, you guessed it, emotional headlines, right, in mass shootings. I think it was due to that July 4th mass shooting, which was terrible. But here's the thing. The law never made us safer. The assault weapons ban law, it's never made us safer. We can point to actually history, and I'll get to that here in a second, where they've done this before, and it didn't do anything to the gun crimes and the statistics there. It didn't do anything to make us safer. Really what this does, it just makes citizens more vulnerable. So now the DOJ is siding with patriots, with gun owners, and they're saying, nope, this is unconstitutional. And let's pause here and go biblical for a second, because that's what we do here. The Second Amendment is not about hunting. Okay, it's not about sports. It's not even really about me going to the range. It's about being protected. Okay, and this is what the Second Amendment says, in case you're just tuning in. Talking about the Second Amendment and how it is not a second-class right. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's what it says. Okay, nowhere in that sentence do I see unless the governor feels scared, unless the gun looks scary, unless the gun is big and black, unless CNN runs another panicked segment about mass shootings. Okay, the right of the people, that's you and me, to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's pretty freaking clear. So the DOJ agrees in their filing in the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. They said what freedom-loving Americans have been screaming for years. History confirms that the Second Amendment text suggests possessing weapons for common defense was a core aspect of the pre-existing right to keep and bear arms that the founding fathers codified in the Second Amendment. That's what they wrote into the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, by the way, the DOJ. They said that, hey, possessing weapons is about common defense, and this is a core aspect of this right. And this is what the founding fathers codified in the Second Amendment for a reason. So this case, it actually started in the Southern District of Illinois, where the federal judge has already ruled, by the way, that the gun ban violates the Second Amendment. Now it's the appeal we're talking about. Okay, the appeal is now in play, and let me tell you, it could head all the way to the Supreme Court. So let's talk Governor J.B. Pritzker, the bureaucrat butterball. That's what I like to call him, bureaucratic butterball. He thinks that he can rewrite the Constitution in a press release. So after the DOJ filed their brief and pretty much said that, hey, history tells us that this is a pretty common practice that people, or common thing where there's a right to defense. This is a core aspect of the Second Amendment. They wrote that. Governor J.B. Pritzker chimes in with this classic gem. Here we go. Quoted right here in the center square. They obviously don't understand the damage that's being done across the country where there are no assault weapon bans. What? Excuse me? Let me stop you right there, Governor Butterball. Okay? Let me stop you right there. We have had decades of understanding how to fix Chicago's violence, and yet weekend after weekend, families are burying their children while you, the tool, you blame us instead of the criminal. Okay, so weekend after weekend, families are burying their children, and then you blame the tool instead of the criminal, the gun. Okay? Guns don't kill people. People kill people. Period. That's how you fix Chicago's gun violence problem. Now, I'm going to take a quick break, but we're going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. I'm going to wrap this story up, but we're going to come back because I also want to talk about, is Israel, are they getting the United States into this war against Iran? I'm going to break that all down here in a moment. I'll be right back.
You ever tried to explain your faith to someone who doesn't get it? Like you're speaking a different language? Peter knew that tension. He told believers to live such good lives among the pagans that even if they accused them of doing wrong, they'd see their lives and end up glorifying God. Translation: let your life preach louder than your lips. It's not weakness. That's warfare. You don't always need a microphone. You need integrity. You need consistency. You need to grind with grit and grace when no one's cheering. People are watching how you handle stress, how you treat your wife, how you react when life sucker punches you. They're watching to see if your God is real because your walk is the evidence. You don't get to control what they say, but you can live in a way that shuts lies down over time. Let your honesty wreck stereotypes. Let your discipline echo louder than their gossip. Let your kindness feel like a gut punch to a world used to selfish men. Because one day, maybe not now, maybe not soon, those same people who laughed at your faith might remember your life when they hit rock bottom. And when they do, they'll know who to call. Live like someone's eternity might depend on it, because it might. You want a pre-workout that speaks for itself? Patriot Pump doesn't need hype, just results. Clean energy, no crash, built for men who lead by example, on the platform or in the shadows. Fuels what matters. Train for legacy.
Hey, good morning. Sorry, I had to take a quick break. I had to sneeze. I have like this real weird head cold thing going on, and it's just awful. But I had to sneeze, and I was like, I'm going to go to commercial break because it's live. But we have Governor J.B. Pritzker. I want to get back to this. We have had decades of understanding what's going on in Chicago, and with Chicago violence, weekend after weekend, we have families who are burying their children, and Governor J.B. Pritzker is out there blaming guns, blaming the tool that the criminals use, instead of blaming the actual criminal. That's the problem here. Governor J.B. Pritzker claimed that the killings have gone down since this whole assault weapons ban thing, but during the federal assault weapons ban of 1990s, which by the way expired in 2004, it was widely criticized because guess what? There was zero measurable evidence that it had an effect on gun violence. Okay, and this isn't a conservative talking point. We know that violence is up in Chicago. It continues to rise. He can claim that killings have gone down all they want. They manipulate those statistics all of the time because they don't even really report on the actual killings. So what they do, if they're not convicted of like murder, they don't count it. Okay, so we know with this ending of the cash bail and the plea bargains, you know, a lot of these drive-by shootings, they'll get pled down, and they don't actually get convicted of murder, and they don't report those statistics accurately anymore anyway. So he claims that the killings go down. This isn't a conservative talking point, by the way. The government studies have pointed this out several times. The Congressional Research Service and National Institute of Justice has said the same thing that I'm saying, that, hey, weapons bans, they don't actually bring down gun violence. In short, this is all political theater. And Pritzker just wants to copy what happened at the national level back in the 1990s. And it was 1990 to 2004, somewhere around there. And it was very, very much criticized because there was no measurable effect on gun violence. We're starting to see that with the assault weapons ban here in the state of Illinois. What they also won't tell you is that mass shootings, they're not they love to twist this, because the mass shooting thing, this only accounts for like 1% of all gun homicides, by the way, mass public shootings. And a lot of those, according to the DOJ itself, here it is in the same filing that they filed with the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, they said mass public shootings accounted for less than 1% of all gun homicides from 1966 to 2023. Let that sink in. All this hysteria, all this unconstitutional overreach, it is based on an extremely rare tragedy that happens, mass shootings. And often these mass shootings are committed in, and I don't think this is by coincidence, gun-free zones. And usually these mass public shooting incidences, the shooter has had multiple red flags and should have been detained by law enforcement and arrested. And those red flags were ignored by law enforcement. So yeah, all this hysteria, all this unconstitutional overreach, all for 1%. Meanwhile, the overwhelming majority of gun deaths in places like Chicago, that all comes from handguns, gang-related, like I said, the drive-by shootings, which often don't get counted. They get pled down in exchange for, testimony, their, witnesses, and they'll get their offense pled down, and they don't even get counted as killings. So this is where law-abiding citizens are disarmed with policies like this, and it doesn't actually help the gun problem. It just hurts law-abiding citizens. So here's what this is really about, my friends. It's about control. The left doesn't want to ban AR-15s. They want to ban the idea of you being responsible for your own protection. They want you to depend on them and to be vulnerable to the systems they control, from transit to healthcare to policing. They want you to be vulnerable. Remember this, the same state where prosecutors literally argued in favor of no cash bail, they want to take your right away to self-defense. Same logic, same game. So they literally want to take away your ability to defend yourself, even though they are in favor of cash bail. These are the same people who are in favor of cash bail. Not everybody in law enforcement is playing along, though. The state's attorneys, they are pushing back. They have 35 elected state's attorneys in this brief here opposing the ban. Here's what they said. We urge the Honorable Court to support and uphold the constitutionally protected rights enshrined in the Second Amendment, the right of the people to own commonplace firearms so they can defend their home and live freely with the means to secure their own and others' ultimate safety. So amen, right? And this, I want to be clear, this isn't about like right-wing activism. These are prosecutors. These are people who see crime every single day. These are people who want to empower victims. They don't want to disarm victims. That's why the state's attorneys had filed this as well, 35 of them in the state of Illinois. There's 102 counties, so 35 out of 102. So shame on all the prosecutors who didn't sign up to do this and to file this. But the criminals, they don't follow these magazine bans. They don't follow these laws. They don't follow these semi-automatic ban laws. They don't do any of that. This only hurts the innocent. So what comes next? Our state is expected to file final briefs in the coming weeks. Then there's going to be oral arguments. Those are going to be heard. And this could be the next major gun case, by the way, in the Supreme Court, right there alongside Bruin and Heller, to fight and reclaim our liberties. So this is going to be huge. And here's what I got to say to Governor J.B. Pritzker. You can't legislate away the Bill of Rights. You can't do it. So I got to take a quick break, but we're going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Welcome back to Conservative Cat Clips, and this is the show that gives corruption a name, a face, and a one-way ticket to exposure. I'm Kat, and today we are taking a really hard look at the unholy alliance between Michael Madigan and the unions he used like pawns in his political empire. So let's be clear. Unions in theory, sure, fair wages, nice, safe workplaces, all good. But under Madigan, unions weren't about workers. They were about votes, money, and absolute political control. Let's dig into it, shall we? Madigan built a fortress of influence using public sector unions, especially teachers, electrical workers, laborers, AFSCME. How'd he do it? Easy. He passed contracts that favored unions with big raises, ironclad job security, and pension sweeteners that simply Illinois could not afford. That's why we have the pension debt. Okay. In return, those unions pumped millions of dollars into campaign coffers, nearly 10 million from AFSCME alone, mostly directed to Madigan's machine-approved candidates. You get the contract, I get the cash, the taxpayers get screwed. This is a corruption carousel that we are on. It sounds familiar. Look at Illinois' pension crisis. Over $130 to $140 billion in pension debt and counting. Madigan and his union pals made promises that the state could never keep up just to win short-term votes. That's why we're in the pension crisis, stupid. Now we're stuck with the bill while they enjoy six-figure retirements at the age of 55. This wasn't just about money, though. Madigan used unions to intimidate the opposition. If you ran for office without a union backing, they'd swarm your district with mailers and door hangers and smear ads, and it's impossible to win if the union is backing said candidate. And they'll use the union to swarm your district, and you could never win against a Madigan machine-approved candidate. And this still goes on today in many areas of Illinois. You didn't run against Madigan, you ran against his union army, and it's still the case today. And then it's changed a little bit. Maybe it's unions and a little bit of nonprofit sector as well. In many areas of Illinois, you didn't run against Madigan or a Madigan candidate. You ran against an army. The best examples of this is in 2018, Madigan's campaign machine sent union-backed operatives to attack Democratic reform candidates. Okay, yes, even people of his own party. Okay, if they dared question his ethics or if they dared run against one of his handpicked puppets, they would go and they'd send union-backed operatives to go and attack Democrat reform candidates. Not quite literally, but, you know, the door hangers, the smear campaigns, all of that. And they had the money to do it because they kept getting the contracts from the government, from Madigan. And he had all the money in the world to do it because he kept getting the money from the unions. It's just this carousel, and you just keep getting screwed as a taxpayer. So don't forget about the shady deals. One union-linked lobbyist said that he felt obligated to hire Madigan's people just to get access to Springfield. That's not representation. That's racketeering with a pension plan. Okay. Now, even with Madigan under indictment and facing sentencing, he has 22 counts of corruption. Those union ties still linger. The same union leaders that backed him for decades, they're still sitting pretty. They're still funding candidates who won't touch reform with the 10-foot pole. None of these candidates want to touch reform with 10-foot pole. Nobody's really denounced Madigan's political machine. Governor J.B. Pritzker surely hasn't. And this has been Conservative Cat Clips, reminding you that unions have become political weapons when solidarity becomes code. Solidarity is code. That word is code for corruption. And when the taxpayer is left holding the bag, that's not labor, that's a scam. Okay. Michael Madigan may be out of office, but his legacy lives on with bloated budgets, crony contracts, union bosses who still pull the strings from behind closed doors. And here's your homework, my folks, in Illinois. Follow the money, follow the endorsements, follow the corruption, because it always leads back to the same machine. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat. I'm going to wrap up this Second Amendment thing. It's not a second-class right, by the way. They twist statistics and they rewrite history. They try to legislate away the Bill of Rights. You can't do that, Governor JB. And you can't disarm a people without triggering a spiritual, political, and legal awakening. Okay, and that's what's playing out right now in the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. It could go all the way up to the Supreme Court. So there is going to be a legal awakening, but also a spiritual awakening. I think more and more people are starting to realize this, especially with the enacting of no cash bail, that God is not anti-defense, by the way. In Nehemiah 4, when the Israelites are rebuilding the wall under threat, it says, quote, in the Bible, Nehemiah 4, those who carry materials did their work with one hand, and then they carried a weapon in the other. In Luke 20:22, we know this one. Jesus says, if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. Okay, not because we're warmongers, but because we believe in stewardship, we believe in the protection of life, and we believe in defense. So the Second Amendment isn't just a political issue. God gave you your life, and you have the right to defend it. And what this is, it's a battle between evil and good. Governor J.B. Pritzker, by taking away this right to defense, he's devaluing your life, the life that God gave you. This is why God, these are unalienable rights endowed by a creator God. God gave you your life, so you have the right to defend it. Stay sharp, my friends. Stay strong. Stay unapologetically free. Welcome back to the Conservative Cat Show. Let's point our fingers over here to this this grift, okay? Brandon Johnson, this government grift is what I'm calling it. So he's a far-left mayor, we know this, of Chicago, and his latest genius move here is putting in 50 new speed cameras across the city of Chicago to shake down everyday citizens who are just, trying to live their lives. And he's putting this all under the guise of safety. Like, hey, this is for your safety. We're going to put in these 50 new speed cameras across the city. And what we're going to do, we're going to shake down everyday drivers under this banner of safety. And hey, I'm going to say it's safety. Really, it's just to shake you down for more money because I can't manage my own city. That's what's going on here. So let me ask you, when has taxing the working poor to pad bloated city budgets ever been about safety? This isn't about safety. Let's be real here. Let's call it what it is. You're taxing the poor. You're taxing the working poor in order to subsidize your cushy lifestyles in the public sector in the city of Chicago. So let's dig into here. Chicago already has one of the most aggressive systems in America, speed camera systems in America. In 2024 alone, those cameras coughed up $90 million in fines, and wait for it, $54 million of that was in late fees. I mean, this is insane. There's the amount of money that is generated in revenue from these speed cameras. So that means majority of the so-called revenue came from not dangerous driving, but people who were too broke to pay their tickets on time. So majority of that revenue, the 90 million, a lot of that just came from the late fees because people couldn't pay it on the due date, and it was late fees that racked up. People are scraping by. People are living paycheck to paycheck. And, the very communities Brandon Johnson claims to be championing, he's destroying these communities. He's hurting these people. And the guy who ran as a progressive, this is what I don't quite understand. He says, I'm going to find new revenue streams by taxing the rich and making the city more equitable. Okay. But now he's balancing the budget by nickel and diming working class folks who are going 26 in a 20 mile per hour speed zone. Okay. So that's not, if that's equity, then I'm a vegetarian. Okay. So let's talk about what the reality is. This is not about public safety. This is a regressive tax. And actually, this is a kind of tax that punishes people for being poor. That's what this tax is. According to Dylan Sharkey of the Illinois Policy Institute, he's quoted in the Center Square, this system targets low-income communities the hardest. Why? Because people who can't pay their tickets right away, every day they wait, the fines balloon. Here's a quote from Sharkey, Illinois Policy Institute. Drivers in low-income communities who can't shell out a ticket on the spot, money for a ticket on the spot, they're on the clock. They're living paycheck to paycheck, and then they get penalized just because of their financial situation. So if they can't dish out the money right away, they're going to get penalized. And this is a regressive tech. This is not policy. It's predatory. Okay. And this is the equivalent of saying this. Give us $35 now, or we'll ruin your credit, we'll garnish your wages, and we'll maybe tow your car. That's the equivalent of that. And isn't it interesting? Sorry, I have a little cold today. Isn't this interesting how the same politicians who scream about systemic oppression, Brandon Johnson, I think every word out of his mouth is systemic oppression, systemic oppression. They're the ones building the systems that feed off of the poor. Okay, so let's get this straight. The cameras, they're not catching dangerous criminals, by the way. Sharkey again, he says, quote, someone driving erratically, say 40 miles per hour, over the speed limit, they're always getting ticketed. They were always getting ticketed. This policy doesn't really affect them. It affects the people who are driving like 6 miles over the speed limit, like in a 26 and a 20 mile per hour speed zone. That's not reckless driving. That's barely idling, by the way. 26 miles per hour. Are you kidding me? You'd get ticketed for going 6 over because the cameras pick up if you're going, 3 to 6 miles over. They were always the reckless drivers. They should have always been, policed and ticketed. And really what this bill does, or this policy, what it does, it says, hey, we're now going to punish the law-abiding citizens, or, well, those who, go over the speed limit slightly. Because the camera doesn't really know the difference. It's always going to catch the people going 40 miles per hour, okay, over the speed limit. I'm not talking about that type of situation. Yes, we have to combat reckless driving. It just sees a number. It doesn't see the situation. Who gets punished? It is going to be the mom who's, picking up their kid from daycare a little bit late. And she's rushing to get there, and she's going 5 over. The warehouse worker running late to his shift, his night shift, it's 5 miles over. The dad who rolled past a school zone 5 minutes after hours and didn't realize that, hey, it's still a school zone, and he goes 26 in a 20 mile per hour school zone. But Brandon Johnson, what he wants you to believe is that these are Chicago's real threats. That's what really pisses me off about the whole situation here. Chicago's real threats, as we talked about, the homicides, the gun homicides that are committed, all handguns, all gang-related violence. That's Chicago's real problem. The carjackings, the mobs robbing the stores downtown. It's not your Kia going 31 in a 25. Okay, it's not that. It's the gang violence, and Brandon Johnson refuses to crack down on that. But this is what justice looks like in these Democrat-run cities. So follow the money. The city officials, they claim that this is about safety. No. Sharkey from Illinois Policy Institute is quoted here in Center Square. He says, if everyone stops speeding tomorrow, you'd get no money from this, and the budget would be worse off. So let me get this straight. If the people obey the law, the city goes broke. What kind of dystopian racket is this? This is a dystopian racket. They want you to break the rules. They need you to break the rules. And they're going to keep you go 1 mile over the speed limit. They're going to ticket you because they don't want safer streets. What they really want is your money. It's a pay-to-play trap disguised as virtue. And Brandon Johnson knows this, but instead of trimming down the fat, okay, we got to trim down the fat here in this bureaucracy in this city. Instead of doing that, he's going after middle-class drivers, and he's having them subsidize his broken policies, his broken priorities, and he's having these middle-class drivers prop up the bloated bureaucracy, these DEI programs. Thankfully, not everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid, by the way, in Chicago. Alderman Anthony Beale, he's a Democrat, no less, called this what it is. Quote, Mayor Brandon Johnson, his decision to add 50 new speed cameras is an obvious revenue grab. Chicago speed cameras have increasingly become about making the city more money, not about making the city safer. And that's coming from within inside the Democrats' house, their own house, by the way, folks. That's not Anthony Beale is not a Republican. Okay, so Beale and a dozen of other aldermen are calling Johnson to roll back the threshold for ticketing and to return it to the 10 miles over the speed limit threshold, which was used as the standard under Mayor Rahm Emanuel. So let's be clear, nobody's saying that, hey, we shouldn't enforce dangerous driving. I'm all about combating reckless driving. Yes, but what I am saying, criminalizing somebody over 3 to 5 miles per hour over the limit in these very traffic dense areas, that's not law enforcement. That's actually extortion. Okay, and really what the extortion is all about, it's lazy governance, and it's about Brandon Johnson not being able to manage the budget. And here's the kicker. These new cameras, they aren't part of like some transparent budget fix. In fact, Beale and others have accused Johnson of refusing to cut waste and unnecessary expenditures. Okay, so it's not a revenue problem that Chicago has, much like the state of Illinois. It's a spending problem because government fat is their business model. They love the bureaucracy. Every dollar taken from these Chicago drivers is one less reason to reform the broken departments, get rid of the useless diversity offices, the top-heavy agencies within Chicago. These cameras feed the machine, and the machine is very hungry. And the people, they're tired. They're tired of the fines. They're tired of being told that they're the problem, tired of being taxed, penalized, and regulated into the ground while crime rages on and the city services deteriorate. And I'm not just here to complain, folks. Let me tell you what you can do. We need to end predatory ticketing. Okay? Here's what the solution looks like. We need to restore the 10 mile per hour threshold. That just makes sense. Why are we ticketing people who are going even 7 miles, 8 miles over the speed limit? Who really cares, right? I mean, okay. Let's just restore it to 10 miles an hour, that threshold, and eliminate the late fee abuse. I think that is just ridiculous. We can eliminate the late fee abuse. We should audit these city departments. They need to balance their budget, and they shouldn't balance the budget by bleeding their citizens dry. They need to actually cut the waste, similar to what Illinois is doing. We're going to get to the Illinois budget. They need to dismantle this whole fee state thing. Too many governments operate like loan sharks. That ends now. That should end right now. Stop implementing fees and stop operating government like they're loan sharks, like you're a loan shark. We need to empower local control, let neighborhoods decide where and if cameras are needed. Okay, so these suburbs in Chicago, instead of just this blanket policy that implements like 50 new cameras, we should allow the municipalities to decide if they want the cameras there. Very, very simple. So, of course, we should be treating our citizens like citizens, not ATMs. And public policy should elevate, not entrap. So here's the biblical worldview on this, okay? Micah 6:8, it says, "He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." This camera program, this is not just, this is not merciful, this is anything but humble. I told you $90 million in revenue, 54 million of that in late fee revenues. The prophets also warned of leaders who add house to house and field to field, which exploit their own people. That's what that means. Let's not forget Proverbs 22, verse 22. Do not exploit the poor because they are poor. Do not crush the needy in court. So that's what Proverbs 22:22 says. And Brandon Johnson, he's crushing these people in camera court. And he's crushing these people with late fees. Why? Because simply they're poor. And he's punishing the poor simply because they're poor. So this is anti-biblical. Final word, I do want to say that this is a pattern, not only in blue cities, but blue states. Tax the working man, coddle the criminal, expand their own control, bloat the bureaucracy. And it ends here. We need to cut the bloat, and they need to get out of your wallets. And ticketing your way out of your own failure, No, that's not the solution. You need to start serving your people. And I do want to talk about Governor J.B. Pritzker, how he signed the largest spending plan in state history. And guess who's footing the bill? It's you. We are breaking down how the state of Illinois has declared war on the taxpayer, because that is what's going on here. I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the largest spending plan in state history. Welcome back to Conservative Cat Clips, where we don't purr for political correctness. No. I'm Cat, and today we are talking about the elephant, or should I say donkey, in the room. It's the Democrat Party and its long, complicated history, and really, let's be honest, self-serving relationship with Black America. Democrats love to talk like they are the champions of civil rights. They're not. Scroll past the hashtags and look at the history books that they don't teach in public school and that they want to get rid of. Here's what you'll find. The Democrat Party, they've been playing the long game here of control, not empowerment. Let's rewind. The Democrat Party was the party of slavery, Jim Crow, and segregation. That's not rhetoric. It's history. Southern Democrats filibustered the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Robert Byrd, a Democrat, former KKK member and recruiter, ring any bells, by the way? He was a Democrat. He was a Dem. And you fast forward to today, how do they control the narrative now? Welfare, dependency, and government programs. Since LBJ launched the war on poverty in the 1960s, trillions, yes, trillions, 25 trillion, have been poured into welfare programs, and yet Black poverty still stubbornly high. In 2023, 19.5% of Black Americans live below the poverty line. Compare that to 8.6% of white Americans live below the poverty line. And here's the kicker. In 1960, over 75% of Black children were born to married parents, two parents. Today, flip that number. Over 70% are now born of black children are now born to single mothers, not to married parents. What changed? It wasn't culture. It wasn't community. It was policy. The welfare programs disincentivized marriage. It punished work and rewarded absenteeism. Okay, all in the name of help. And the Democrats, they built that system. They built that system, the welfare system, and they keep defending it decade after decade. They're defending it today because guess what? If you're dependent, you're predictable. You vote, and you can you vote the same way, and you can keep the check coming in, and you vote and vote and vote for Democrats, and the check keeps coming in. It's not compassion; it's control. And it's political plantation politics. And it's still happening in 2025. Meanwhile, conservatives offer school choice, they offer job growth, they offer criminal justice reform, entrepreneurship. And every time we push those ideas, we get called what? Racist, Uncle Tom's, sellout if you push things like school choice or entrepreneurship or homeschooling. God forbid you push homeschooling. The truth hurts when it threatens the hustle. Okay, so they're being hustled, Black Americans today. Here's the truth. Strong Black families don't need rescuing. They need opportunity, not handouts. They need fathers in the home, not more checks in the mailbox. Okay, they need dignity in work, not defeat and bureaucracy. And they need leaders who lift them up, not lock them into these cycles of poverty for votes. That's what they're doing with these welfare programs. They're locking entire communities into this cycle of poverty just so that way they can secure votes, the Democrat Party. This has been Conservative Cat Clips reminding you the party of welfare isn't the party of freedom. And if you're relying on them to save you, you're not free, you're owned. Hey, it's Conservative Cat. Thanks so much for being here. Subscribe right now. Pull out your phone, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow me on Rumble. You can go to patriotpumpenergy.com, buy your bottle of Patriot Pump Energy today. Use promo code ConservativeCat, $10 off at checkout. Before we took break, I was telling you about the state of Illinois declaring war on the taxpayer. Yes, they just signed this $55.2 billion budget. Governor J.B. Pritzker did. He signed that state budget. This is the largest budget in Illinois state history. Let's take a listen to this. Here we go. There he is. He's signing it. He's declaring war on the taxpayer right here.
This year, that task was made harder by the turbulent national economic conditions and unstable federal funds flow caused by the chaos and ineptitude of the Trump administration. With rising gas prices across the nation and Trump tariffs taking a bite out of everyone's wallets, our General Assembly and I are working together to make life more affordable for working families.
I look at Chicago. I mean, you got a really bad governor in Chicago and a bad mayor, but the governor is probably the worst in the country, Pritzker.
Why is he so right all of the time? That's President Donald Trump. In a couple of minutes, I'll take your chats. Don't worry. If you've got questions, throw them in the chat right now, and I'll take your chats in just a couple of seconds. I do want to get to the numbers, though. $55.2 billion. That's the largest budget in state history. $15 billion. It's gone up $15 billion since he took office 6 years ago, Governor J.B. Pritzker. That's a whopping 40% increase in spending. Now, how is he planning on paying for all of this? He's not paying for all of it. You are. The budget increases include $1 billion in new taxes. So they're increasing spending. And how did they pay for it? $1 billion in new taxes. And we're talking taxes on a few things: cell phones, tobacco and vaping products, sports betting, bed and breakfasts, corporate tax hikes that ultimately will trickle down to who? You, me, the consumer, because it trickles down faster than a kid holding a melting ice cream cone. Okay, the taxes on the corporate and the millionaires. Yeah, Pritzker is like Oprah and with taxes, and he says, you get taxed, you get taxed, you get taxed, everybody gets taxed. Who can tax the sunrise? Who can tax the trees? It's Governor JB. So let's focus in on the cell phone tax. Do you rely on your cell phone to get to work? Do you rely on it to take care of your family, run a small business? Too bad. Under this budget, there is a new surcharge slapped right on your phone bill, because in Governor J.B. Pritzker's Illinois, your cell phone is now a taxable luxury, and it's not a necessity. What happened to affordability? What happened to equity? Weren't Democrats supposed to be the party of the working class, people who need cell phones? You need your cell phone. This, again, is only hurting poor working families or middle-class working families. And they've become the party of digital pocketing. They've slapped this tax on you. Now let's talk about the sin taxes, because on top of the cell phones, they're taxing you if you smoke or you vape, or if you bet on the weekend. Again, I don't smoke, vape, or bet on the weekends, but this is now the newest like cash flow thing that the state has grabbed onto, and it doesn't even generate as much revenue as you think it is. I think it accounts for like a 1% or 0.01%, like all of it combined of the revenue. So like you would think that like, oh wow, all of these gambling places that are around, like it must be really generating a whole lot of revenue for the state. Not really, when you look at the numbers, but they're raising taxes, of course, on tobacco and vaping products, and they're pretending that this is about public health. They're saying, oh, well, we're raising the taxes because smoking's bad for you. Stop it. It's not about the lungs, okay? It's about your wallet, okay? And you want to take my money so that way you can spend it on the bloated bureaucracy. Same with sports betting. Pritzker pushed to legalize it years ago. I think that legalizing any of that sports gambling is just a bad move, but they push to legalize it because they want to bring in revenue. And guess what? Surprise, surprise. Who could have saw this coming? Me. I saw this coming. They're jacking up the prices again, or the taxes again on this. So once again, the state, they get a taste of that money and they never go on a diet. Okay, so they are also attacking the hospitality industry, which is really weird. I think the town of Normal is actually going after Airbnbs now. I'd have to look into that, but here's why they hate this. It's because more and more people are using that as passive income. So middle-class Americans, they're trying to break out of this middle-class tax bracket, and they're trying to become upper middle class. And the way you do that is by being an entrepreneur and having like passive income, right? So a lot of people have figured this out, and it's a big thing on YouTube. They tell you how to do it, and it's a big thing where they tell you how to make money off bed and breakfasts or Airbnbs and like these rentals. You flip them and then you make a ton of money off of them, and it's a way to get out of the middle class bracket because it's passive income. You keep your regular job, but you can also create passive income. And they hate that. They hate that you have figured out how to be an entrepreneur and that you've figured out how to break out of a certain tax bracket or to make your life better, which is why they're going after it, which it's shocking. So bed and breakfasts, they're hiking up the taxes there. So nothing says revive our tourism economy like penalizing mom and pop shops or mom and pop inns that are still recovering after the COVID lockdowns. Obviously, Airbnb, if you have some of those, if you have like a little tiny, rental property, you're still recovering from COVID because, nobody was coming here to the state, obviously, to tour. And like, they're all about reviving tourism. Like, there's this whole thing dedicated in the state of Illinois, like an entire state agency dedicated to tourism. What are you guys doing? Nothing says revive our tourism, like penalizing these poor people who have these rental properties like bed and breakfasts. So Pritzker's budget doesn't just tax income, it taxes experiences. So now what they're trying to do is tax your experience. If you enjoy one of these bed and breakfasts, they're probably going to tax your experience of leisure. It destroys entrepreneurship, the taxes on these mom and pop inns that, are trying to make some passive income and make their lives a little bit better. They want you to stay at home. They want you to stay poor. They want you to stay dependent on the government. And God forbid you make some passive income through bed and breakfasts and Airbnb, which is something that's really easy to do, surprisingly. I haven't done it. We've looked into it, and it'd be really, really easy to do, like relatively easy to do. It doesn't take too much. You'd have to like find some properties and but you can be cheap and you'd make your money back. I mean, this is like the definition of entrepreneurship. And the government hates that because God forbid you make something of yourself, because these people are all jealous. That's what they are. They're the kids at lunch and they all sat together and they were the real weirdo theater kids. And they're jealous of the people who actually go out and make something of their lives and don't rely on taxpayer money to subsidize their lifestyles. So anyway, this next part is almost funny if it wasn't so insulting. He blamed Donald Trump for Illinois' financial mess. He said, and I quote, "This year, the task was made harder by the turbulent national economic conditions and the unstable federal funds flowing in, unstable federal funds flow caused by the chaos of the Trump administration." So this is what he's talking about here. It's Donald Trump's fault. It's Donald Trump's fault. Really? Donald Trump's the one who bloated the state budget by 40% in 6 years? That was Donald? Oh, Donald Trump demanded that you give health care to illegal immigrants. Donald Trump passed $1 billion in new taxes on Illinoisans this month. Come on, folks, we know. I mean, he and his rubber stamp legislature, the supermajority Democrats, this chaos comes straight from Springfield. Here's the real story behind the budget. Let's not forget this little nugget here. The budget ends health benefits for immigrants in the adult program, so illegal immigrants adult program. Why did he do that? I personally think he did that because it is not a winning issue. This is like almost a 70-30 issue, 80-20 issue with illegal immigration. People want borders. People want federal immigration law. And people do not want illegals taking taxpayer-funded resources. So a recent audit showed that this had massive cost overrun. Like, they projected that it was only going to cost this much. It costed way more than that. The health benefits for immigrant adults program, it costed way more than that. There was a lot of reporting errors in this program. It was a flagship program. Governor J.B. Pritzker defended as compassionate and as humanitarian. Turns out it was financially reckless. Because when they had originally done this thing, they were like, oh, it's only going to cost this a little bit. It's only going to cost a little bit. And then it ballooned. Everybody said it would. Because once you say free healthcare for immigrants, you're advertising yourself, and they're all going to come here to the state of Illinois and get the free healthcare. So it was financially reckless. It wasn't managed correctly. There were a lot of reporting errors. These people can't even run a lemonade stand. Okay. So instead of reforming it and demanding accountability, maybe, I'm not for this, obviously, because you shouldn't be giving illegal immigrants health care. Okay. Because they're not citizens and they've broken federal immigration laws. But to put that aside for a second, instead of reforming it and demanding accountability from the state agency who administered this program, Pritzker just axed it. That's what he did. And I think he really just axed it, not because he recognized that, because we still have, for over 65 illegal immigrants, seniors, they get free healthcare here in the state of Illinois. I think he axed it because it's not a winning issue, and he's supposed to be running for governor maybe in 2026, possibly president in 2028. So he axed it, this program. And what did he do? He just racked up taxes on you. And I mean, the waste goes unchecked. The working families, they continue to get taxed into oblivion, taxed to the bone. This is all corruption, by the way, with a smile. It's not compassion. Republican State Senator Minority Leader John Curran said it the best. In 6 years, Governor J.B. Pritzker increased spending by $15 billion. $15 billion with B. This is huge. And this budget has no meaningful tax relief for Illinois families. It increases your taxes by $1 billion. And Governor J.B. Pritzker's budget gives nothing to working families, no income tax cuts, no property tax relief, not even a freeze, okay, on property taxes going up. Just more burdens, more bureaucrats, more baloney. And if you're a middle-class Illinoisan, the budget tells you one thing. You work, they spend, you lose. That's it. Okay, so now, in true Trump fashion, the president didn't stay quiet. While at a meeting with G7 leaders, he was asked about immigration, and he took the opportunity to hit back at Pritzker, and he said that, I look at Chicago, they got a really bad governor, really bad mayor. The governor's probably the worst in the country. That's Governor J.B. Pritzker. Folks, he's not wrong. Okay, so he was at a meeting with the G7 leaders, and he said this: how embarrassing. Governor J.B. Pritzker doesn't lead. He taxes. He doesn't solve problems. He throws cash at them, and then he blames Washington when it all backfires on him. So here's a better way out. Let's talk solutions. Zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting. Say it with me. Zero-based budgeting. What is that? Well, it's when every agency starts from scratch, and we should be doing this at a local level, by the way. Our schools, our county, our city councils, they should be doing this. It's where every agency starts from scratch, and then they have to prove what they need. So no more automatic increases, zero-based budgeting. Audit the waste, investigate every dollar, especially in failed programs like the immigrant adult benefits. If they screwed up that program, we find out who screwed up, they're fired, right? Whoever, came up with the calculation that it's only going to cost the taxpayers this much, it wound up costing like 1.6 billion, I think it was, that healthcare program overall. We should be firing people who gave crappy estimates surrounding that program. We should cut corporate taxes. We shouldn't increase them so businesses can stay here, they can grow, and then they can hire people. Sales tax, holidays, I think that we could do some of that. This budget doesn't even include anything like that, where, back to school costs, you could, during back to school, you should remove some of the sales taxes or pause the sales taxes collected by the state. You could have done something like that for tax relief. If you didn't want to do like a freeze on property taxes and increasing property taxes, which was out there, by the way, there was legislation for that. The Republicans, of course, introduced it, but it didn't get anywhere. You could shrink the bureaucracy. That's an easy way. And the endless commissions, the boards, the consultants, the equity coordinators, all that crap. Just get rid of it. It's not rocket science. It's just basic stewardship. Don't spend what you don't have, right? And biblically, Proverbs 13:11 tells us this: wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. So what is this budget? This is a hasty tax grab. It's not careful. It's not righteous stewardship. Isaiah 10:1 warns, woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees. Friends, I don't know what's more oppressive than taxing the working man to fund a bloated budget or a bloated government. I don't know what's more oppressive than that. These people are salty. They're angry. They're a jealous people because they weren't entrepreneurs. They weren't the business owners. They were the weird theater kids who grew up and said, I'm going to take my revenge out on the people who actually made something of themselves. So there is no justice in endless taxation. There is no virtue in fiscal addiction. They're addicted to your money. Here's a reality check. Your cell phone bill is going up as a result of Governor J.B. Pritzker's actions of signing that budget. Your weekend leisure, your Airbnb, you take the kids out to a nice little cabin, or you rent it for the weekend. Your leisure, now taxable. Your local business being squeezed. Your leaders, they are blaming Donald Trump for all of it. Look, this is Conservative Cat. We don't play the blame game here. We call it what it is. This budget is a betrayal of the working Illinoisans. You deserve better. You deserve accountability, and you deserve leadership, not this leech ship is what I like to call it. They're leeching off of the taxpayers, and they're sucking you dry in order to prop their lifestyles up because they don't really want to make a product or sell anything or go out and do anything. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Let me get to some of your chats here in just a second. I'm going to take a quick break, and then I promise you we are going to get to the war between Israel and Iran. It's heating up. Today's show is going to break it down as to whether or not the U.S. will be getting involved. I don't think that we're going to be getting involved. Israel has an intense fighting force. Now they've shown restraint, and I'm going to get to that as well, which shows you who the good guys are and who the bad guys are in this war. The people who are defending themselves and showing restraint, actually really great. Like they're the good guys in this, okay? Israel. And I know a lot of you have been asking me, are we going to enter World War III? I don't know. Well, we'll get into all of it here coming up. I also want to get to this boomer who freaked out and took a Donald Trump doll and beat it across this table to reduce his anxiety. And I'm also going to play a clip of this little girl who took a stick and beat. It's so sad, actually, because this is just like a little girl, so she doesn't understand what's going on. Okay, she's like 6, 7 years old. She takes a stick and starts beating a Donald Trump piñata at one of these No Kings protests. So we're going to get to that. And plus, liberals, the Democrats, they always say, if we, prohibit illegal immigration, if we deport the illegals, our economy is going to, just be decimated. And Americans don't want these jobs. Well, actually, this meatpacking plant, they had an ICE raid recently. And guess what? The next day, Americans were lined up to take those jobs that were previously filled by illegal immigrants. I'm going to get to all of it here next. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Conservative Cat Clips, where we don't meow around with the facts. No. I'm Kat, and today we are heading down to the New York City subway system. Not for a ride, but for a reality check. Let's talk about Jordan Neely. The media painted him as a subway performer. They paint him as a troubled guy who just needed help, and he was on the subway to do no harm. His death, May 2023. About that time, it turned into another instance of racism and injustice. The headlines were out before the full story even hit the tracks. And here's what they left out, and here's what you deserve to know. Jordan Neely wasn't doing Michael Jackson impressions on the subway. He had 40 prior arrests. 40. He was on a watch list for violent behavior, including attacks on subway riders. Okay. And just 2 years earlier, before his death, he had punched a 67-year-old woman in the face, breaking her nose and her orbital bone. So this man was not a man in need of applause, by the way. He had a long, dangerous history. Shame on his father. He should have taught him better. He should have been there for his mentally ill son. His father instead went out and tried to secure, funding and, made himself look like he was the victim. The man, this was a man with a very long, Jordan Neely, long, dangerous history, roaming free on a system that fails both the public and the mentally ill. I won't lie there that it fails the public, but it also fails the mentally ill. Shame on his dad. Like I said, he should have been there for him. Somebody in this guy's life should have been there for him. On the day of his death, Neely was threatening passengers. Witnesses reported him shouting, throwing trash, and saying he didn't care if he died or went to jail. He goes, I don't care if I die. I don't care if I go to jail. One Marine veteran, Daniel Penny, did what many were afraid to do in this situation. He stepped in and he put him in a sleeper hold. And when it was all over, he got charged for manslaughter because in today's America, protecting people gets you in handcuffs and threatening people gets you hashtags and GoFundMes, and your dad's out there with the politicians asking for political donations and asking for GoFundMe money. Let's get real. The true scandal here was not Neely's death. It's how many times the system failed before it got there. Okay, before like the system failed so much. It failed the public. It failed Jordan Neely. Why was a violent offender with a known mental illness on the streets? Why wasn't he locked away in an insane asylum? This is where New Yorkers are left to fend for themselves, while their city leaders blame systemic injustice or whatever, systemic racism. Why is self-defense treated like a crime now, by the way? Daniel Penny, he just defended himself and all those New Yorkers in the subway, and what was his thanks? Charged. So soft on crime policies, empty jails, and woke prosecutors putting everyday Americans in danger on subways, sidewalks, and in their own neighborhoods. This is the cold, hard truth. That is what led to that incident. Okay, soft on crime policies. He would have never been there had we been hard on crime policies in New York. The media didn't cover Neely's victims, by the way. They didn't tell you that the woman he brutalized broke her orbital bone. They didn't tell you about the terrified passengers that Daniel Penny saved. They just gave you a headline again, similar to Michael Brown in 2014, similar to George Floyd in 2020. And once again, politics replaced justice and people got rich. BLM, they got rich, and all of these radical groups get rich. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. I'm Cat, reminding you, we don't fix society by ignoring lawlessness. We don't protect the vulnerable by unleashing the unstable. And we sure as heck don't get justice by punishing the people who are brave enough to step up when no one else would. It's time we choose public safety, not a public spectacle. Okay, this has been Conservative Cat Clips. Hey, welcome back to Conservative Cat. Be sure to subscribe, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, follow me on Rumble. Okay, let's look at some of your chats. Go ahead, send me a chat. Ask me any kind of question you need help with. Dems using masks to intimidate voters again. Dems getting the KKK band back together. Danny. Yeah. We all know Senator Robert Byrd. He was a Democrat. He was a KKK recruiter. The Democrat Party has always been the party of slavery. It just looks a little bit different now. They use government dependency to enslave people instead of just like physically enslaving people. And they say the quiet part out loud, which we might get to here. LA Mayor Karen Bass. She was like, oh, the economy will be completely decimated if we don't have illegal immigrants to pick our fruit and to watch our kids and to watch our elderly and to take care of our elderly. Like, this is so racist. I can't believe that people have like come out and said this about immigrants, that they should be pretty much indentured servants in servitude to the United States American, and they should do these jobs that we should be doing, growing our own food, helping our parents, and raising our children. Right? And conservatives, you talk to any Republican, most of them have chickens, by the way. I don't know what that is. Most of them have chickens and understand that they have a personal responsibility to cook their own food and to make their own food. And to now, I am going to totally debunk this whole notion here in a couple of minutes that illegal immigrants are the only people who want to do these jobs. There's actually a meatpacking plant where they lost employees due to a massive ICE raid. And then suddenly, as soon as the illegal immigrants were deported, guess who lined up for the jobs? It was Americans, people who were American citizens, and they lined up to take those jobs. So it's just completely false to say that American people won't want these types of jobs. Now, here's the thing. They probably won't do the job for the price that you're paying your servant for, or your slave for. Okay, they're probably going to demand a wage that is fair. Yeah, sorry, Democrats. We're not enslaving people anymore. And we're not using people's illegal status as a way to get them to do things for cheap and to pay them slavery wages. Okay, so let's get to a few other things. Don't forget the pizza tax, the delivery tax for the RTA, the regional transit system. That's the Chicago transit system. It's so funny. They're asking for $770 million, by the way, Jay Lopez. They want $770 million, not to fix the transit system, the crumbling infrastructure, these buses that break down, the schedules that are just a mess and people can't really even take the transit system or go on the buses or the trains because it's just a complete mess. Because these people, remember, they can't run a lemonade stand. They couldn't do that. So they want to take the $770 million and create an app. And that is what they want. The $750 million, by the way, they want to make an app with that, not to fix their crumbling infrastructure or their chaotic scheduling. No, they want it for an app. Yeah, hey, Tango the Great, he says, didn't Governor J.B. Pritzker raise the gas tax immediately after becoming governor? Yes, he did. In 2019, the gas tax doubled. Now, one thing that gets away from you in that story is that there were actually Republicans. I'll never forget it. I was shocked to find this out. Dan Brady, who's the current city Bloomington mayor, his picture, his signs are all over the McLean County Republican headquarters, which is just so sad because this guy also is pro-LGBTQ Pride Month and recognizing that as an official. And look, the Republican guy's not a Republican. I can kind of dismiss it because mayor is supposed to be a nonpartisan role. In the city of Bloomington, it's seen as a nonpartisan position. However, the Republican platform, he ran as a state representative, a Republican in Illinois, and he ran for Secretary of State. And by all appearances, you'd think that Dan Brady is a Republican. He's not. There is an official platform. Okay, look it up, the Illinois GOP. You can look up the platform, and they are anti-traditional families. Okay, that's essentially what the platform says, is that although not universally achievable, we believe that every child should have two parents, a man and a wife, in holy matrimony. That is what Republicans believe, according to their official party platform. So by signing into law and decreeing that June is Pride Month in Bloomington, as the mayor of Bloomington, you aren't a Republican, which, I mean, I'll give him some grace because technically that role is supposed to be a nonpartisan role. But he, along with other Republicans, voted to double the state gas tax. But here's where it's really evil. They voted to double it in 2019, but they also voted in that same bill for the incremental increases to happen without it ever coming to a vote. So every year it will go up. I think it goes up again July 1st of this year. Every year hereafter. I mean, it's forever. It continues to go up and it continues to climb that tax. So that's crazy. Absolutely insane and totally evil. Any other questions? You guys throw it in the chat. So slave labor and fraud voting, the Dems are all in. Yeah, and it's all part of it. So they hook them and they get them in for their government dependency. So the checks in the mail and like these little pennies, they get them these jobs, right? ICER, Immigration Project, a lot of these nonprofit organizations that specialize in illegal immigration, what they'll do is they'll give them just enough, just a little spurt of enough to keep them out of like, being homeless and enough to keep them out of like dying in the streets. They'll give them just enough to keep them dependent on them, which is servitude. And this is slavery. Okay. So if you're looking to the government for everything that you need in order to survive, that's not, dependency. That's not freedom. It's enslavement. And the Democrats do this. They'll say, okay, we're going to get you an immigration lawyer. We're going to get you a little job on the side where you get paid cash, but you're only going to get paid like $5 an hour. And hey, we also want you to vote for us. This is, part of the deal. We're going to give you like table scraps, but we also are going to require you to vote for us. So yeah, that's the Democrat Party. The party of slavery. All right, let's get into Iran and Israel. I promised you I'd get into it today. Today's show is breaking it down. Is the U.S. getting involved? And are we about ready to enter World War III? The war between Israel is heating up. Israel and Iran, that's heating up. No American troops, and I'm gonna tell you this, should be involved in this war. I don't think that Americans should be over there. Do I think that we should be supporting Israel? Maybe not significant amount of US dollars going and spending on this war, because that's just going to make it worse. I think that Israel, if they wanted to today, could end this war completely. But they are showing restraint, which proves who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. But I don't think that there should be any significant amount of tax dollars going into this. We should stand and pray for Israel. That's a big thing that we can do as an American, is pray for Israel. We are called to do that. We are called to bless Israel, and we will be blessed. Curse Israel, and you will be cursed. I don't think significant tax dollars should be spent on this. I think that would actually fuel the war and make it worse. That's going to only piss off Iran even more if the U.S. starts funding this via proxy and kind of enters into a proxy war. That said, I understand why Israel is doing this. It's because they are becoming a nuclear power, and that is not a good thing. Iran being a nuclear power. And the reason why they are becoming a nuclear power, look no further than Obama's piss poor nuclear deal, the Iran nuclear deal, which I think was 2015. If I'm getting that wrong, blast me in the comment section. But I think it was 2015. This is where he said, pretty please don't just temporarily kind of don't work on your nuclear program. And in exchange, we're going to give you $1.7 billion in cash, pallets of cash, this is a drug deal. And we're going to remove these sanctions and things like that. That's what happened with the Obama nuclear deal. So yeah, that's all Barack Obama's fault, why they are becoming a nuclear power. So we can blame Barack. Damn it, Barack. He's always the one to blame. CBS, according to CBS, Israel and Iran, they traded more missile attacks on Sunday, despite calls for a halt to fighting, with neither country backing down. Their conflict has raged on for several days now, and the exchange of fire comes as talks on Iran's nuclear program in Oman between the U.S. and Iran were called off. So the U.S. was supposed to have talks with Iran about their nuclear program, but we called those off. And now they're just going at it. They're just launching missiles left and right. It's quite insane. Now, what would require World War III? A lot of people have asked me, think there's World War III coming? I'm excited because I think that the war to end all wars, biblically, it's in Revelation. I think it's coming soon, very, very soon. I don't think that we're quite there yet, though. as far as a World War III or World War, because that would mean you'd have to have a significant number of countries getting involved. Now, let's not forget that China and Iran, they're joined at the hip. And Russia, China, right? They're all joined at the hip, and they're all in it for Iran, okay? We can't dismiss that completely, but I don't think that they're getting involved yet on an international state. Like, we're not seeing China and Russia, getting involved. And I don't think we're headed in that direction quite yet. Now, that could change. All it takes is China to, give some missiles to Iran, and boom, China's in the war, right? Or give them some money to take out Israel. Now, Iran said that Israel struck its oil refineries, killed the intelligence chief of its paramilitary Revolutionary Guard, and hit population centers in intensive aerial attacks that raised the death toll in the country since Israel launched its major campaign Friday to 224 people. That's according to CBS. Health authorities also reported that 1,277 people were wounded, without distinguishing who's military officials and who's civilians. So Israel is not being weak about this. They are. They're showing restraint. I'll get to that here in just a second. But they are attacking. They are striking their oil refineries. They're killing their intelligence chief there, part of the Revolutionary Guard. They hit population centers with these aerial attacks. The death toll is rising in that country. Now, this isn't unprovoked. I want to make this very clear. Remember, Iran directly attacked last April and October 7th. We remember this. So think about this. When people say Israel shouldn't be doing this, think about this. If something were to happen in America, okay, which it's kind of funny to kind of make this, comparison, because this would never happen, I don't think. But say, like, we were at war with Cuba and Mexico launched 180 missiles into the United States. There would be no question, okay, the United States would defend themselves, okay? That's what happened here. Iran launched all of these missiles, attacked them in April and in October. And you should ask yourself this question if you're deciding if what Israel is doing is justified. It is justified. They were attacked. They're responding. So Israel, widely believed to have its own nuclear-armed, the only nuclear-armed state in the Middle East, by the way. And I believe that they do have nukes. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not privy to those conversations. I wish I was, but I think that they have nukes, and I think that they're showing restraint. Because think about it. They could just drop, like, nukes on these guys and, like, blow Iran off the map, but they're not doing that. And that goes to show you who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. They don't have, like I said, they're expanding their nuclear program. Iran, thank you, Barack Obama, for your crappy Iran nuclear deal. That didn't actually do anything. In fact, you sent them pallets of cash, to the tune of $1.7 billion in 2015. Anyway, they don't have the nukes right now. But if they did, you best believe Israel would not exist today. Okay, so they're building this out, and that is why Israel is attacking, because we cannot have Iran have a nuke, because they will use it to eradicate Israel. And they probably wouldn't mind using it on the United States, because guess what? They hate us. Israel said that Iran has fired 270 missiles into the country since Friday, 22 of which had slipped through the country's sophisticated multi-tier air defenses. Okay, so that caused havoc in residential suburbs, killing 14 people and wounding 390 others. So by sheer numbers game, it looks like Iran is going to be defeated. Okay, if we're looking at the numbers, because like I said, they had 1,000 plus wounded. They have 390 wounded. They killed 224 people, Israel. And I'm just talking like within the span of like from Saturday to probably about yesterday. Okay. So by sheer numbers game, I mean, if we're looking at this by the numbers, they're going to win. So there is no question here. Iran wants to eradicate the Jews. They want to eradicate the Jews as much as they want to eradicate any kind of little whiff of freedom here in the Western world, in the United States. Death to America, death to Israel. That's what they chant. That is part of their goal. According to USA Today, President Donald Trump warned that Iran warned Iran. So President Donald Trump warned that if Iran were to strike any of the U.S. targets, so we've got U.S. things over in Israel, embassies and things like that. If they were to target any of that, as the conflict escalates with Israel, he says, quote, full strength and might. You're going to see the full strength and might of the American military, and it could be used in the Middle Eastern nation, in Israel or in Iran. So is that a prerequisite for World War III? Because if the U.S. gets involved, Iran, would China get involved? I don't know. China's not happy with us. Obviously, right now, China has also really gotten a foothold in Africa and in Latin America, and this was done strategically so they could be near Europe and that they could be near the North America, and they've done this strategically. China is going to be the biggest threat here. Okay, as always, China's the biggest threat, and if they enter the war, we're screwed. But I don't foresee China entering the war unless the United States enters the war. But even then, I doubt that they'd enter the war because, I mean, it is the United States of America, the greatest fighting force of all time. So I don't know. Does this mean, realistically, can we say that there are allies just ready to join the war on behalf of Iran? I don't think so. I don't think we're at that point yet. Right now, it looks like it's going to remain a localized conflict. And I think that if the United States joins, we could force China's hand, and China might, come to this the rescue of Iran. I don't know. Obviously, I'm just talking out loud here, and this is what I see. I don't think that we're there yet. And like I said, Israel is a fighting force not to mess with, much like the U.S. military. Their fighting force is much better than Iran. I think that they are a nuclear power and they have nukes. I don't know. I'm not privy to those conversations, but they could probably erase Iran off the map tomorrow, but they're showing constraint. Why? Because they're actually the good guys in this. Okay, if Iran had a nuke, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. Israel would be gone. So if we are attacked in any way, shape, or form, this is what Donald Trump says on Truth Social, by Iran, the full strength and might of the U.S. armed forces will come down on you at levels never before seen. He wrote this on Truth Social at 12:32 a.m. on June 15th. However, we can easily get a deal done between Iran and Israel and end this bloody conflict. So this is the art of the deal, right? Donald Trump knows that he's got the power. Like, we could go in and wipe off Iran immediately, but what would that do? Is Iran really, we're kind of gambling here. Are Iran and China as close as we think, or are they close? Are they allies? And will China automatically come to the defense of Iran? I don't know. But I think that there can, obviously, Donald Trump thinks that there can be a deal done here. And really what this is getting them to stop their nuclear program. And once they agree to do that, like, actually, and not this like nuclear power or this nuclear deal that was done under Barack Obama, if they actually agreed to do that and enforce that, then the war's over. Okay, so close your eyes. I want to get to this now. Close your eyes and imagine billionaires funding leftist protests, mass protests, and imagine those mass protests just raging against these cities and law-abiding Americans. Okay, now open your eyes. $10, you saw exactly what happened during the No Kings tantrums over the weekend. Okay, this is what you saw on Saturday. The No Kings Thursday through Saturday really is what the No Kings. So leftist billionaires, they organized another mass protest. They got progressives to cause, I think it was $200 million in property damage in Chicago alone. We know that there was like 16 arrests one day. So in like Friday, so probably triple that number, multiple arrests. And they were throwing these tantrums. And you've got this guy. I'm going to play this clip now because you guys ought to like this. This is a guy that starts bashing a Donald Trump doll across the table because he's got Trump-induced anxiety. So let's take a listen and watch this guy here.
We were just talking about this morning. No! Dog! Bad boy! Bad! No!
What? These people are mentally unstable. So this took place in Beverly Hills. Shocker, not really. This woman had set up a table, and it looks like a psychiatric stand. It says 5 cents to, beat up a Ken doll dressed like Donald Trump. And Mr. Boomer here, he took her up on the 5-cent deal. And, well, you saw a grown adult man beating a Donald Trump doll to get his anger out in therapy. Okay. They called it Theratrumpy. Theratrumpy is what they called it there on the thing that looked like a lemonade stand, kind of. Theratrumpy. And he says, bad boy. And he starts beating the hell out of this little doll. Now, this is what's really sad. Los Angeles, there were children that were given sticks to beat a piñata, which wasn't full of candy, by the way, which I was like, oh, damn, they really screwed these poor kids over. They've got kids, they gave them the sticks to go beat a piñata that looks like Donald Trump during one of these No Kings protests. Oh, but these were mostly peaceful. These were very peaceful protests. What? Let's take a look at the kid beating this piñata, which I don't think any candy came out, which this poor girl was duped. Here we go. Okay, that is so very disgusting. Poor child. The entire concept of No King's Day is complete trash, by the way, because kings usually don't have their agenda usurped by a rogue judiciary funded by billionaire activists. So let's set all of that aside. The same billionaires, if we accept 5 million protesters, so they're saying now the No Kings protest actually exceeded the BLM protest, numbers-wise. They say there were 5 million protesters. And they funded, those same billionaires funded these protests, by the way, and got those 5 million people out there, which, okay, if we're going to go with that number, sure, 5 million protesters. That's less than 7% of the people who went out and voted for Kamala Harris, by the way. And they got less than 7% of those people to come out for these protests, these billionaires who funded these protests, to take to the streets and repeat talking points that they were told to. And, they just repeated what they heard on CNN and things like that, these 5 million protesters. What's really interesting is now they're saying that these protests exceeded the BLM riots. Okay, no, absolutely not. So 10 million plus people on June 6th. There were 10 million plus people is what they claimed back in 2020 is what BLM brought out. Okay, so now they're claiming it was only 500,000 BLM rioters. Okay, now I don't know where they're getting their numbers or anything. It was probably, all of this is probably not even factual, but the New York Times, they said that back in 2020, 120,000 protested in New York alone. Okay, so for the BLM riots, and that there were 10 million protests, or 10 million protesters in the BLM riots. So Now they're like lying, okay, because we have the receipts. In 2020, they said that it was 10 million plus protesters who came out on June 6th of 2020 to protest George Floyd, okay? Now they're lying. Why? Because the left, they dispose history when it's convenient for the next current thing. Okay, so I want to share this with you. This was in July 3rd of 2020. This was the headline. I think this was, New York Times. They said Black Lives Matter may be the largest largest movement in US history. So they said that, and then I got to show you this. This is a new chart that they've got going on. This is a new chart that they're putting out there. And they're saying that the No Kings 2025 protest far exceeds the George Floyd riots, the BLM peak. Okay, the peak of the riots, there was 10 million. Okay, that's what they said in 2020. Now they're not saying that. Now they're saying it was 500,000 people was the peak. Oh, come on. We all know that that's not true, right? So now they're saying there were 5 million No Kings protesters in 2020. So what does this tell you? What does this tell you about the left? They will lie and they will dispose history as long as it uplifts their current thing or the current narrative. And let's set aside that every single person demonstrating would have no problem bowing down to a king, and that they did. All of these people protesting these kings, they did bow down to a king. They bowed down to the governor, J.B. Pritzker's. If that king validates their worldview, they have no problem bowing down to Governor J.B. Pritzker, those protesters in Chicago, and they had no problem bowing down to Governor J.B. Pritzker, because they were scared enough to believe the invisible sniffles was going to get them, during COVID. I got to take a quick break, but I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat.
Real strength doesn't need applause, and real faith doesn't flex for attention. Jesus said, when you fast, don't walk around looking miserable. Try to look holy. That's not devotion. That's performance. And God doesn't reward actors. Matthew 6, verses 16 through 18. Is Jesus calling men to fast in secret, where only the Father sees? Because fasting isn't about proving your discipline. It's about pursuing God with hunger. So real, you trade food for fire. You don't fast to earn points. You don't fast to make space. You weaken the flesh so the spirit gets louder. You say no to your cravings so you can say yes to something deeper. But here's the catch. It's got to be real. Not for your boys, not for social media, just you and God. In the quiet, in the dark. That's where rewards are born. In silence, in secret, in the furnace of unseen obedience. You want to be strong in public? Train in private. Fast without a stage. Pray without applause. Obey without a crowd. Your Father sees in secret, and He's the only one who reward what matters. Patriot Pump doesn't give you just energy. It keeps you focused. No fluff, no crash, just clean, hard-driving fuel for men who train with purpose and sacrifice. If you're building discipline in the dark, this is your edge. Train hard, stay sharp.
Patriot Pump Energy. Be sure to go buy your bottle today. $10 off using the promo code ConservativeCat. Before we took the break, I was telling you a little bit about the guy who's beating a Trump doll. And let's make no mistake here, the people at these No Kings protests, they definitely bent the knee to the tyrants like Governor J.B. Pritzker. Why? Because Governor J.B. Pritzker validates their worldview. He's like them, and they have no problem bowing down to those types of kings, or to the types of kings like Anthony Fauci, Governor J.B. Pritzker, who locked everybody down because of the invisible sniffles or whatever, and they were scared enough to bow down because of the invisible sniffles, COVID-19. So they had no problem during COVID to bow down to kings. But now they've got an issue with Donald Trump because he's a king or whatever, which is just bogus. But at the end of the day, I'm going to play this one.
We were just talking about this morning. No! No! No!
Insane. If you find yourself doing this, you are not sane. If you find yourself paying 5 cents to beat the head of a doll against a table, you're probably not a sane person. In fact, I would say you're probably not normal. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Be sure to subscribe and like this video, share it out with your friends. Bye-bye. Love you.